of NFL 2019, the NFL 100 year, which you won't hear much about from them because obviously they don't want to promote that too much. They're 100 years in the league. It's not an NFL thing. We are here with you guys as always. We're going to be giving you the darkest recesses of our mind for week one in the world of NFL DFS, of course, as always. I'm Chris Spags, joined once again by the founder of Awesemo.com, the top DFS player in the world, Mr. Alex Awesemo Baker. How are you doing today, Alex?
I'm doing good, man. I mean, this is a beautiful time of year. Like, just leading up to NFL Sunday, week one. I mean, you have no idea what's going to happen, and we're going to do our best shot at kind of predicting it.
Yeah, of course, this is the time to take advantage of things. And one man who's also been equally good as Alex at taking advantage of things in the world of DFS, Travis Petty, better known as Petty Theft out there, another top 10 player according to all the ranking systems out there. Travis, welcome on board. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Not as good as Alex in the Chicago summer, but I'm doing very, very well. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on board. I think this might be the first time in the world that we've actually had two top 10 DFS players on the stream talking about contrarian NFL picks. Might be a very limited market to talk about, but I'm glad to be here with you guys. I'm, of course, just outside the top 10, so that's the reason why we're not doing three of them. But working my way up bit by bit, I'm sure, with this show especially. And, of course, real fast, we've got to give a quick shout-out to our sponsors at Fantasydraft, who is the official home of rake-free daily fantasy out there. Go right now to fantasydraft.com. Use the promo code AWESEMO. With that promo code, AWESEMO, you'll get your first $1,000 in rake-free entries with no fees at all from Fantasy Draft. This is the way they do it, though, where 100% of winnings from these contests are going straight to the winners. They're not taking rake on them, just a monthly membership fee. But for you guys, you get no fee at all. And Alex, obviously, you've played a ton of DFS. You've paid a lot of rake in your life. How do you feel like the advantage is for going to Fantasy Draft for most of the players out there?
Dude, it's going to be so big. I mean, if I didn't pay rake, I would be doing this show from a private island, not a cubicle. And I think that the savings you're going to have playing on Fantasy Draft really accumulate fast. They have some great promos this week. Their signature tournament is $1 million prize pool. That's huge. I mean, first place is $100K, and you're really seeing the lack of rake when you go down the structure. I mean, second gets $60K. A lot of tournaments in the industry, it'll be like 25% first, but this is 60%. Third is 40,000. I mean, this is your best bet to win some big prizes, and I'm suspecting that they might not even fill up, so that's even more discount on top of what they're already offering.
And you get to support Hooters at the same time with their big tournament, which is near and dear to my heart. So go right now to fantasydraft.com, use that promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, and join some of those big tournaments there with your first $1,000 of entries completely rake-free. It's a 7-day trial with promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO. All right, guys, so let's talk about it. Let's start going here. And I want to kind of go on a higher level first because you guys are both two great players, two guys who a lot of people I'm sure are going to have questions for. And guys, if you do have questions, I'm not sure if we're going to have time this hour, but leave them in the chat as we go, and I'll try to put some of the better ones aside in case we work a little faster than we anticipate. But Travis, let's start with you. You've been playing NFL for how many years now? Let's tell the people that. And I guess, what are the biggest lessons that you've found so far?
I feel like I've played for too many years. It's been like 6, 7, and include season long. Basically my whole life, I feel like 20 years, I'd say. Week one, what I'm looking for is I'm trying to find pricing mistakes with guys that are overlooked. You know, like for example, if you played yesterday and you knew that Tariq Cohen would be a wide receiver instead of a running back, that's the kind of edge that you're looking for in week one that other people are not seeing, because there's no knowledge out there, right? It's just a bunch of coach speak, and you don't know what's true and what's not true. And I think that's where you find the most value in week one.
Alex, how about you? Do you feel like that's kind of the main thing you look for? And I guess what would be your process if you're trying to figure out those little wrinkles where Tariq Cohen, David Montgomery is a guy coming in the backfield, and he's a guy who has good hands, so you could kind of assume maybe that they wouldn't use Tariq Cohen the exact same way out of the backfield. But Alex, what are you looking for to kind of get that edge?
Absolutely not the same thing Travis is, man. I mean, like you can find some good values, but the field tends to be pretty sharp, and they'll gravitate to them too. So I think week one's a little bit of a different animal because there are so many casual players that you can play a pretty conventional strategy and make some money. But going off the board a little bit with some sneaky plays, that could be the ticket to winning a GPP. So I'll look forward to seeing who you guys think could be the next Tariq Cohen.
So Alex, the next Tariq Cohen, what great praise for some lucky player in week 1. But Alex, I think one question, and I think this sort of ties into your overall theory, where for your projections in every sport, you're using generally kind of a longer longitudinal size. For NFL, it's a 16-game season, so there's not as much of a sample size. What are you doing to kind of get a baseline for projections? And also, how are you looking at rookies? Because guys like Kyler Murray, a lot of hype on them, but you really don't know how that shakes out. So how do you project those guys, obviously, without getting too into the weeds?
Well, I can tell you guys how other people are projecting them. They're just taking their college stats and plugging them right into the NFL. And that's why we're seeing Kyler Murray being projected to be one of the best quarterbacks in fantasy. I mean, like, this is a guy that's on one of the worst teams in the league. I mean, he'll probably be pretty decent, but that's like a situation where the hype is just like huge. So it is kind of like knowing historically how do rookies typically fare, and also like, you know, how's it going to change going from Josh Rosen to Kyler Murray, and get the context of how guys have done in that spot in the past, and you can kind of come up with a pretty good estimate of what's going to happen. Of course, after this week, we're going to have even more data to go off of, so it'll be really informative.
Travis, how about you? How do you look at the longer term of these guys, and how would you project a guy like Kyler Murray? Obviously, again, without going into the weeds there, but he's a guy who's talked about a lot. We know about the pace that has been discussed with Arizona, with Cliff Kingsbury's going to be bringing in there. So how would you look at these guys, and how would you weight them relative to how the field is?
You know, because Alex went at me, I'm going to have to go back at him here. I'll tell you why. Arizona's offense last year was horrible. So, and I get it. When he said the team is bad, they were horrible last year. I don't know how many points a game they scored. Probably like, 16, 17 a game, I'd guess. And they're projected way higher this week. And I get it. Kyler Murray's got a lot of hype. He's likely overhyped. But he is like the perfect fantasy football quarterback, right? For me, to his point, I don't know if Kyler is the guy I want to stack. I prefer quarterbacks who pass the ball for the correlation than the running quarterbacks. But gosh, Kyler Murray, that air raid offense, I feel like it could be potentially nasty. I don't know if it's going to happen in week 1, but Alex mentioned it. His college stats were pretty damn incredible, right? You don't find guys who throw for that much and run for that much. So I'm curious to see what he does. I'm not as excited as everybody else, but it's mainly because his lack of a correlation, not necessarily because, you know, his college stats are not what's going to happen in the pros. They have a pretty big point total.
Yeah, I mean, and the Detroit defense, too, should be a bit improved as well. They were possibly better than it seemed last year. Granted, they also benefited from kind of killing the clock quite a bit. But they are a team who have made some good signings there. Mike Daniels being a good one who they brought into the middle. They were already a good run defense. The secondary a little bit weaker. But I think Kyler Murray, I mean, you guys both mentioned it. His college stats were out of control. He was a really good deep ball passer, one of the more accurate deep ball passers in college football in the most recent memories. I think right alongside Baker Mayfield, ironically, another Lincoln Riley product out of Oklahoma. But there are some guys who, I mean, Kyler Murray is one who we're going to have to consider quite a decent volume here. Travis, also one quick thing which we should hit on fast. You're running a Twitch channel right now, right? So that's your main thing you're doing for your internet content. What is the channel and what should people expect from you?
So twitch.com/pettytheft89, similar to my username. And I'm starting to do it daily. The time's not exactly set, but 10 a.m. Pacific time is looking pretty good. And the main thing I do is actually answer people's questions. It's a little different from the normal streams you have. I love to answer questions. My main thing for doing this, main reason is I enjoy talking with the community about DFS. It's a passion of mine, and if you go there, you can ask me whatever, and it's very likely I'll answer your question, no matter what it is.
Yeah, so go check out Travis. You can see his social media handle on there at Petty Theft, which is with an E, Pettey, and then theft is the way you would spell it. And check out his Twitch streams, because Twitch is what all the cool kids are doing. Alex, we might have to get on that Twitch world here. We're a bunch of rational, kind of older, classy gentlemen. We need to get in the muck with the kids on Twitch.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be honest. I haven't adopted Twitch yet. Maybe Travis, you can give some arguments for old fuddy-duddies like me why we should get on there. I mean, of course, I want to check out your stream too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a gamer at heart as well, so Twitch is natural.
Nice.
Yeah, so go check out Travis's stream. And I guess before we go over to all the games, and of course we are going to cover all the main games here, the main chalk, the highest totaled games. So we're going to hit on all that stuff. But I guess one last thing I wanted to pitch it to you guys. Alex, do you have any questions for Travis? Because you're a top 10 player. He's a top 10 player. You're the number one guy. So if you want to roll that out at him too, you can do that. But any questions for Travis you have about what you think he's doing or what you want to know about how he approaches things?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to get into deeper strategy, but I'm not sure I have enough time. So just tell me who to pick this week, man.
You know, I was going to ask you the same exact thing. After the showdown yesterday, I feel like I had 110% confidence going into yesterday in the NFL season. After that showdown, I'm down to like 20%. I'm hurting. It was rough.
It's a tough game to open up with.
Yeah, I mean, like, how would we know about the Tree Cohen? I mean, he didn't even do that good, but...
Right. But if I knew he was going to do that many snaps, I would have had my whole game plan. I would not have Anthony Miller. It's just like a trickle-down effect, right? Mm-hmm. It's not even about Tree Cohen playing wide receiver as much as, like, somebody has to get cut from wide receiver.
Yeah, and it looked like it was Anthony Miller yesterday, but we'll find out in the next coming few weeks. Also, one quick note from our premium Slack. Dante saying, Travis, that you look like Little Dicky, the rapper. So I'm going to take that as a compliment, personally.
You know what? I think 10 years ago it started out, I got Bill Simmons, so we're moving the right way. I got Dirk on my stream. I get all sorts of guys.
One. I like
Dirk's a good-looking guy. I have no problem with that. I have no problem with that at all. I'll take all the compliment.
I'm feeling kind of jealous over here. The best I got is that dude on the Lakers, Alex Caruso.
Did you see the Photoshop of him and he got drug tested afterwards of him looking all jacked?
Is that real, by the way? That picture's photoshopped?
His head was shrunk, and I think it was also like a body, like one of those apps that gives you abs. And yeah, but he got drug tested after that went viral.
I like that. You know, I'm a big Lakers guy, so Caruso, give him all the fame and he needs.
Time for Alex Caruso to blow up, and also time for week 1 to blow up. Let's get into the games here. First game we should hit on. We got a lot of chalk ownership in this Atlanta at Minnesota game. The position players and Julio are going to be the top owned guys. And Alex, you're really big on Minnesota with your projections this week. And I did the videos, of course, this week, the Osmos NFL rankings, and the wide receivers here came up pretty big. Stephon Diggs as well as Adam Thielen came up as guys who kind of had some good value and upside. Dalvin Cook, another guy, a lot of reports about how Minnesota's going to be running the ball more, trying to get him more involved. Alex Madison behind him as well, a guy who's going to get some touches. But the main guy we're looking here is Dalvin Cook. He's going to be one of the chalk running backs of the week. So, Alex, how are you feeling about Minnesota being so chalky up front? Are you comfortable with Cook at that ownership, and are you comfortable with Thielen and Diggs at theirs?
Yeah, I think that anytime you have a team facing Atlanta, you have to be pretty interested. I mean, Atlanta's a pretty high-powered offense, but they're not a strong defense, so this game has some real shootout potential, so I can see why Dalvin Cook is one of the most popular players of the week. I'm a little bit more skeptical about this popular notion that they're going to run the ball a lot more than they did. They have some really good receivers in Diggs and Thielen, so I don't really see much incentive to run more. And if they get down in the game, certainly they're going to air it out. I don't project Dalvin Cook for like huge rushing attempts for that reason. I think Alexander Madison might also get in the rotation there. But he is pretty effective out of the backfield as a receiver too. So I think that this just comes down to him being mispriced on some of the sites in the industry. I mean, he's a feature back, and he's only $6K on DraftKings. He's $7,400 on FanDuel, and the matchup's pretty decent. So I think I'm in favor of it.
Yeah, 15.6 touches per game last year for Dalvin Cook. And, I do err on the side of thinking they are going to run more, because down the stretch last year, the last 4 games, we saw Thielen's targets per game drop to 4.5 per. And also Diggs has dropped to 7.3 per. And he still had some 10 target games in that last 4-game stretch. And obviously that's the smallest of small sample sizes. So I get it. I do have some concerns. But so Travis, you're the tiebreaker here. How are you feeling about the Minnesota offense? And are you trusting this run game narrative, or are you just kind of defaulting to the longer term projections?
You know what? I love that Alex said he's a fan, because I'm not a fan of these guys at all.
Ooh.
It's perfect, because this like combination of high total, good matchup, and slightly underpriced, I feel like it always ends up with players being overowned compared to their ownership. And I'm never a fan of that grouping of 3 stats. In this game, I actually think if I would choose anything, I might choose Devontae Freeman at around 5K on DraftKings. I think that he could really tank this high ownership game just by himself. There's a lot of good scripts where he crushes and everybody else doesn't do nearly as well. And I think that's where I would look to go in this game.
Interesting. The Devonta Freeman call is a good one, because, I mean, there is no Tevin Coleman there now. Ito Smith and Brian Hill, neither guy has shown a penchant to take a big load off the table here. Alex, how are you feeling about Freeman?
I'm a little bit down on him. He's making it into some of my crunches, but I've seen him be pretty high up in the best ball drafts this year. I'm kind of expecting the situation to be the same as when Tevin Coleman was in the rotation instead of Ito Smith. there have been so many situations where either Tevin Coleman has been out or Devonta Freeman has been out, and it's always like a pretty decent timeshare. There's never been a situation where one guy has just gotten a large majority of the work. But still, I think that this game could be a pretty good one to target, and therefore Freeman has some decent fantasy value. But I'd be more interested in going for some of the receivers for Atlanta.
Okay, that's fair. And speaking of the receivers for Atlanta, Julio Jones is going to be one of the most popular plays at wide receiver. So, Alex, I'll just throw it back to you. How are you feeling about him as a chalk play? And he was one of the better receivers in the league last year, 2.9 yards per route, which is an outstanding number just behind Albert Wilson, who's more of a gadget player. And for a guy who's getting the volume, he has 10.6 targets per game. It's a pretty big number to have for Julio. So how are you feeling about him against a tough Minnesota defense?
Yeah, they're tough, but not too tough. Last year, their efficiency defensively, they allowed about a quarter yard less per passing attempt than your average team, which isn't going to really move the needle for Julio. And I mean, they have a lot of consistency since last year. Pretty much the same guys coming back, aside from Freeman, who was injured most of last year. So I think we can expect similar production to last year. And what that means is Julio's going to have a couple of games every season where he's just by far like one of the highest scoring wide receivers of the week, and you need him to win a tournament.
So Travis, you're a Freeman guy. Obviously, these guys can both get there at the same time because this Atlanta offense has put up a lot of points, even if they are going against a pretty decent Minnesota defense, even if Alex isn't sold. How are you feeling about Julio here? Because he is going to be chalky, and he does fit the criteria of a chalky guy in a high total game. So are you into him?
I'm always into Julio. I kind of look at Alex say, like, he always has at least a few games a year where he just goes completely off, and if he's not in your lineup, you're sunk. It's as simple as that. And the Minnesota matchup is not the most ideal one, but hopefully that steers some of the ownership away from him, because 8K is a pretty good Julio price to take him at. I don't mind it. And again, the team has not really changed that much from last year, and I believe this would be a cheaper price for him. So I don't mind taking him at all, even if he's a little chalky.
All right, that's fair. And I guess to close the loop here, the quarterbacks, because I think these guys, Alex, one of your corollaries where we have ownership on position players, but not so much on the quarterback for Kirk Cousins, and you're a believer in that pass offense. So is he or Matt Ryan a guy you're interested in, Alex?
Yeah, I think that my initial look at the quarterback ownership is that it's pretty much around where I kind of think it should be. I did identify one sleeper for the end of our show, of course, but...
Oh no! Is it in this game? Because that's not good.
No, it's not. I think.
Okay.
I mean, I like these guys. They both have like some pretty good receiver weapons, and I think that the game will be competitive. So this could very well be the game of the week. So I'm going to have some game stacks here.
And Travis, let's close the loop on the quarterbacks. Any interest at all in Matt Ryan, or even I guess the tight ends? So we didn't talk about Rudolph, and probably just need to make sure we're covering all our bases here.
So in terms of Cousins. Again, since I'm not really a big fan on Minnesota as a total, I feel like Cousins will be inflated due to stacks, so I'm not a big fan of him. Ryan, I might think is a very sneaky quarterback. We might learn that later or not. Not going to say. The tight ends, I'm not too big on these guys. I feel like there's better plays.
Hooper is a guy who jumps out to me as a potential pivot to a very chalky Hunter Henry, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But Ryan's a guy who's this year, thank you to the boss man and, of course, our other founding team. We got PFF's premium stats for media. And Matt Ryan's a dude who jumps off the page with how he did last year. So on deep passes, he had a 113.9 QB rating, which is actually one of the top numbers in the league, rather. He was also really good when he was pressured. He had an 87 QB rating and a 72% accuracy rating. He also had a 117 rating in a clean pocket. Like, he was filthy in every situation. So if we don't believe in the Minnesota defense, I think Ryan could be sneaky. But again, no spoilers. Perhaps we'll talk about that later. And also, thanks, Alex, for buying the Pro Football Focus. Feel really smart now. Let's keep it moving. Let's talk about this Indianapolis at the Chargers game with the aforementioned Hunter Henry and a very chalky Austin Eckler, who I think is one of the guys you can poke holes in. On the strategy show Wednesday with Lafayette, you talked a lot about that and the situation with Eckler and how, we saw down the stretch, Justin Jackson was a big part of it. And also we do have some other weapons in that offense. So Travis, I'll turn it to you first. Another chalky player here who's a decent value guy and does project well according to most projection systems out there. So how do you feel about Austin Eckler at high ownership?
I'm really curious to hear what you guys think about him, because I can go both ways on him. I really can. He is the starter in a good script. I believe they're a 6 or 7 point favorite. Solid point total, I think 25, 26 points. and again, he's moving from running back 2 behind an elite running back to running back 1. And I get it. He's going to be sharing with Justin Jackson. We've seen this. But Melvin Gordon went in a role where you would assume Austin Ekeler was going to kind of play what Melvin Gordon was. Melvin Gordon was like a low 8K player. So with that said, you would think Ekeler is really underpriced. But as you mentioned, I think you said Laffy probably mentioned these things. He had chances last year in this exact scenario, and he was highly mediocre. And I think I wrote down he scored under 13 points a game in his 3 starts, and they went 3-0 and they scored 79 points, and he only got 13 points as the running back 1. That to me doesn't make any sense. So with the ownership on top of that, I honestly don't know which way I'm going to go, and I'm curious what you guys think about him.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, I'll throw it to you, but with one stat in between, Indianapolis' defense only gave up 3.9 yards per rush last year. Also a very highly graded defense according to Pro Football Focus. And as Travis mentioned, Austin Ekeler did have that shot last year, and then we saw Justin Jackson kind of take it away. Ekeler's a littler back. He's very little. He can't carry that big of a load. So, Alex, how do you feel about Austin Ekeler as a value chalk play?
Yeah, I agree. Kind of, he's not your prototypical feature back. I mean, the dude is like 200 pounds. That's barely more than me.
Weird flex.
But okay.
He's lifting a weight on the side, I bet. He's got a weight in his left hand.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is the Chargers have had 2 productive running backs, even when Gordon was starting. Ekeler was pretty effective as the RB2, and they gave him a lot of work. So the combined production from Ekeler and Justin Jackson is just too big to ignore. I think they're both in play, and kind of how you break down the timeshare is going to determine which one you're going to end up on. But I think Ekeler, they showed a strong preference for when they went out to London. He got hurt after that, and Jackson got more of the work, and Ekeler was kind of hobbled a little bit. So it's hard to read into too much. And maybe the situation has changed since then. Maybe they have more faith in Jackson. So this is a kind of situation where we don't have the luxury of waiting and seeing, because there's too much fantasy value here. We just got to kind of make our best guess.
And 19 touches per game off the table for Melvin Gordon with him not being in the lineup. But yeah, I think this spot, I think you guys covered it pretty well. I guess, Travis, if you had to pick one, if you were going to play Austin Ekeler or Justin Jackson, a person who has very strange demands is like, Travis, you have to play one of these guys. I'm holding a gun to your head. Which one of these guys are you going to play out of Ekeler and Justin Jackson?
I mean, for me, I'd go Ekeler. I like the safer guy. As safer. It's not actually safe. I don't know if he actually is safer, but he just feels safer being the running back 1 of the team as of right now.
Yeah, okay, that seems fair to me. Alex, how about you? Let's close the loop with these running backs.
Man, screw you, Travis. I'm picking Justin Jackson just because I want to disagree.
I'm okay with that.
All right, so and let's talk about Hunter Henry here, because he's also going to be a very popular player this week. One of the budget tight ends who looks like he's going to be very chalky according to ownership projections at Osmo.com. And Hunter Henry's a guy who was really good when he was in the league before getting hurt the previous year. But last year, the Chargers had a lot of success keeping Virgil Green, who's also a decent pass catcher, not a guy who's been used at the volume of Hunter Henry. And also Antonio Gates. These guys were kept in the line a little bit more than you would think, but Hunter Henry's back in there. The Chargers had success kind of keeping the tight end into block. So that's one tiebreaker for me why I'm not going to be with the field on Hunter Henry. But Travis, how are you feeling about Hunter Henry, another chalky player who's a value guy and theoretically has some upside at tight end?
Again, usually I hate the chalk. I love Hunter Henry, and that's not me as a Chargers fan saying it. I love Hunter Henry as a play this week. I think he's horribly mispriced. 2 years ago, when the season you were talking about before you got the injury all last year, minus like the hobbled Henry that came back in the playoffs, he was like a mid to high 4K tight end, and that was when he was sharing time with Gates. There's not a big worry about that anymore. He is the man. And I just feel like in this offense, he could be, by the end of the season, a mid-5K tight end. I think that's just such big value that you eat the chalk here all day.
Yeah, all right, that seems fair to me. And Alex, how are you feeling about Hunter Henry?
I got a good PFF stat. He ran 300 routes in 2017. He was targeted 60 times for 20% of the routes that he ran. If you apply that to this week, then that would be about 6 to 7 targets. And that's going to be some serious fantasy production in a situation where the Chargers should be able to produce some points.
Wow, I am shocked that you guys are in on a cheap chalk tight end, but maybe I'm missing something here. So that I'll take that to the bank then, I guess. I guess on this game, anybody else you guys are seeing, because there isn't much ownership for anybody else involved. A little bit for Keenan Allen, who is a guy who does kind of jump out as a potential Hunter Henry pivot if we are going to get some passing game success here. Alex, anybody at all on Indianapolis or the Chargers who are jumping out to you?
I think that Indianapolis is pretty overpriced given that the price is if Andrew Luck is starting, but Jack Doyle is kind of a deep sleeper. That's the guy that's won people like a ton of GPPs before, and people are kind of on the Ebron train because he was the guy when Doyle was injured last year, but now he's healthy. So that would be someone kind of on the fringe of my radar. And then the Chargers receivers, Mike Williams has a ton of hype this year for some reason. I'm not really as big on him, but he is a decent play if you're stacking, as well as Keenan Allen. But I probably wouldn't gravitate towards them if I'm not stacking up that team.
Yeah, Mike Williams, the kind of classic guy who seems due for some regression with a 15.2% TD rate on his catches last year, and that's pretty unsustainable relative to most of the other guys. But Travis, how about you? Anybody else jumping out for you in this Indianapolis side or the Chargers side?
I mean, first, the Mike Williams TD rate, that was absurd. As a Chargers fan, I was loving it. But as somebody who never played him and I'd fade him over, he crushed me. He crushed my soul over and over and over, and nobody cared that he was catching TDs at a crazy rate. But actually, the guy that I'm most interested in or curious about thoughts-wise is not somebody that Alex even mentioned. It's T.Y. Hilton. He is very overpriced, right? And for the reason you said, Luck is not the quarterback anymore. But with Brissett 2 years ago, he did have some monster games. I think I saw he had 3 games over 30, or maybe it's 28 plus. So there is potential there. And with a guy like T.Y. and his skill set being so boom bust in GPPs, I feel like he always is in the discussion, especially as a very, very low owned guy. I'm curious what you guys think about that, because again, the value is not there. But when you add the ownership and his style, I'm curious to take a little percentage of him.
I think the idea of Brissett being a good quarterback is in play because Derwin James isn't out there this week, or isn't expected to be out there this week, barring something strange happening. And I think that's going to help out quite a bit here. And I am a Brissett believer. I don't know that I would want to play him this week because the Chargers defense was really good. But Alex, how do you feel about, I guess, Brissett being a vessel for T.Y. Hilton's greatness?
Yeah, I mean, I lost a lot of money those weeks, so I remember. But I was actually not bringing him up because I was going to use him as my contrarian sleeper. But Travis, your recommendation moved his ownership up too much, and now he's off my radar again.
You don't know that. I can move it down.
That's how tout life works. You got to go with the ebbs and flows as always. That's fair. All right, so we'll talk more about TY perhaps later, but I guess there is some interest in TY here at not much ownership expected at all, under 5% projected on DraftKings and elsewhere. So it looks like a good spot for TY. Let's keep it moving. On to San Francisco at Tampa Bay, where we have a high team total with big ownership for Tampa Bay stacks. And there are going to be a lot of wide receiver ownership, it looks like. Mike Evans, though, is questionable now with an illness. One would assume he's not going to miss week 1 unless that illness is really debilitating. We also have a pretty chalky Jameis Winston at quarterback. O.J. Howard getting some ownership at tight end, but not a crazy amount. So, Alex, how are you feeling about another chalky, really chalky across the board team?
I think there's a lot of reason to be excited about this game. I mean, Tampa Bay was an absolute punching bag for offenses in the season last year, and I'm not expecting that to change. Jimmy Garoppolo is kind of someone who was hyped up last year to be a great player, and he got injured, but he was pretty successful in efficiency when he started. So I have pretty high expectations, especially given that he's facing the Buccaneers. And I think it's easy to stack him up with George Kittle. Finding that second guy, I'd probably recommend Pettis or Samuel, but I'm not like super crazy about either one of them. And then Tampa as well, I think is a pretty good spot. Jameis is one of my favorite season-long players because in the games he started, he absolutely put up monster fantasy performances, and Fitzpatrick was kind of taking his playing time. But now Blaine Gabbert's the backup, and he's no Fitzmagic, so I'm expecting Winston to be able to get his year.
I can't wait for Ryan Fitzpatrick to be your contrarian quarterback later. I'm looking forward to that part of it. How are you feeling about this one, Travis? Because we do have, again, some chalky players here on the Tampa Bay side. Not so much on the San Francisco side, even though, as Alex mentioned, guys like George Kittle look fantastic. Another good, really good yards per out guy who had a lot of targets, over 8 targets per game last year. So how are you feeling about this game, and which side would you prefer?
So first, I want to say that for all the contrarian stuff at the end, my hope today was to get all of Alex's contrarian plays out of the way. It's like a game of Battleship. I'm just taking shots and hoping I hit them all before he gets there, just to trip him up a little bit, so make him think of some new guys on the spot. But for this game, Tampa Bay, I'm not sure how I feel about them because, Evans looks like he's fairly priced. I don't see huge value there. Godwin's moving out to wide receiver 2, which is a big boost from last year, right? But then again, his price has also jumped up. So I'm not sure how much value is there. Deshaun Jackson and Adam Humphries both leaving it's a solid net gain, right? Humphries just, I don't know why, he'd get a million targets for 2 yards a gain every single time. And those targets have to go somewhere. And Deshaun Jackson, I think, I'm not sure how his impact is, because I could see him being good for his teammate, his other wide receivers, in terms like he's a deep ball guy. He stretches the field for his teammates, more targets for his teammates, easier targets. So I'm not sure the impact on him, but I know Adam Humphries being gone is going to be great. Perriman, who's their new number 3, he's not much of a player. So I think the fact they don't have a real guy to take those targets instead of Deshaun and Humphries, I think that's a solid for the receivers. But again, the price, like Godwin's price is up, and Evans is kind of what he was last year. So I'm not overly excited about that one. Go for it. No, I'll go for it. What was
just Rashad Perriman, you brought him up real fast, and I wanted to use that because I can't force him in, but I think he's a guy who's worth this 1% ownership he has because, again, as you mentioned, there's no deep ball receiver there now. Deshaun Jackson was a guy who was getting targets, and Perriman was actually good when he had a decent quarterback throwing a D to him. Baker Mayfield last year, he had a 48% catch rate on passes over 20-plus yards and was getting targeted deep pretty often. So I think he's actually a pretty interesting little add-on at low ownership. Not a guy, and Alex, I'm sure we can talk about this in a second, where you really can't bank on a wide receiver 3 who's going to get low volume like Perriman, but he's a guy, if they are going to throw it deep, I think would benefit right away. So, I mean, Travis, I'll throw it back to you. Does that change your mind on Rashad Perriman?
Yeah. I should have clarified from like a real life perspective. I don't think he's going to hog all the targets that are gone now from Humphries and Deshaun. I think he'll take up some, but I think there's still targets to be had. So maybe there is some potential for the Tampa Bay guys. I think, again, if his ownership's that low, that makes for a nice little leverage play. As for the San Francisco side, I don't really know where to stand with Garoppolo. I don't think Garoppolo, looking at him in itself, is that important. Being the quarterback, you have to look at the stat guys too. And I think Kittle, how you feel about Kittle will show exactly what you're going to do with Garoppolo, right? Because if you're going Garoppolo stacks, you got to imagine Kittle is going to be a pretty solid, if most, if not all of it. And I'm not actually a big Kittle guy. Last year, 3-game sample. Again, we're going to those 3-game samples, and I know it's small. But it's all we have, or it's from last year at least. And I have his market share for his targets is only 22.5, which I believe was around 10% lower than his year total with his other quarterbacks. And again, his other quarterbacks were awful, but they threw him the ball. That's the most important thing. And on top of that, while it seems like a good matchup, I believe his salary has peaked on DraftKings this week for his career. I don't think he's ever been this high before. So I do love expensive tight ends because I think people trap themselves on the value tight ends. Like they see, I don't know, a random 2,800 tight end in a good overall team spot, and they over-target these guys. Their upside's just not there to win tournaments, though. So I do like the expensive tight ends in a vacuum, but I'm not sure this is the Kittle week.
All right, Alex, any rebuttals to any of those points? Travis raised a lot of good information.
Oh my God, so many rebuttals. I mean, Rashad Perriman, this is a guy.
Can I just leave right now?
Rashad Perriman was a first-round pick. I mean, he had Flacco throwing him to him for a few years, but this is a guy with a lot of talent. It hasn't materialized yet, so I think that maybe Winston could be the difference. I could see him having a good year, and I think that he's a good sleeper. And Kittle, I mean, I think a lot of the quarterback targets are scheme-based, and not like kind of like the quarterback likes this guy or likes that guy. It's like the coordinator is kind of like telling him the game plan, and he produced big with like Nick Mullins and C.J. Beathard throwing him the ball. And that, to me, indicates that he's a tremendous player, at least as far as receiving. And I'm expecting that to continue this year.
A really high yards after catch number for George Kittle. He's a super athlete, so I mean that could be sustainable, but just almost 10 yards after catch for him, and that's it's a scary proposition because that does seem I wouldn't say fluky because I agree. I think he's very talented, but I do think you guys both raised some valid concerns, which are going to ruin my 100% George Kittle ownership on the week. Anything else here in this game, Alex? Any defense interest at all? Because we do have 2 quarterbacks who can turn it over, at least did turn it over last year at a pretty good rate. And Jameis Winston, actually, I've been arguing there's apparently a Jameis Winston truther community out there who thinks the media is firing against him to besmirch his good name, even though they're accurate stats. He was a terrible deep ball quarterback last year. Also, we all know about the turnovers. He was the 37th worst quarterback in terms of QB rating on deep passes. He was also pretty bad in a clean pocket in terms of accuracy. He only had a 71% accuracy rate when he was in a clean pocket, and that's very low for a professional NFL quarterback. So, Alex, any defense interest at all against these guys who may not be as good as we think?
Yeah, I mean, Tampa's one of my favorite teams, but I love the 49ers defense as well. I mean, the offensive line in Tampa has been terrible. Like, you can see it in their run production just being, like, abysmal. I mean, part of it's the running back sinking, but Jameis Winston has thrown a ton of picks, and that's why he kept getting benched. His interception rate's above 3%. They get sacked a ton. And although they're projected to put up some decent points, I mean, there's a lot of potential for a big defensive performance here, too.
You mentioned a number there. Is 3% kind of a benchmark like we do for baseball? We have 22% K rate kind of thing?
I mean, 3% kind of equates to maybe like an interception a game, which is
Gotcha.
pretty high. Most good quarterbacks are around like 2%. 2 to 2.5 is the average range, I would say.
And Travis, how about you? Any defense interest at all, given that these teams are going to be passing it a lot and they have shown a lot of penchant for screwing up while doing so?
With defense, I never know what's going on. I look back at that showdown slate last year, the 54-51 Rams-Chiefs game, and when I was looking at showdown slates, a defense captain won that game. Can you believe that? It was incredible. So I tend to be a lot more contrarian on defenses, and the Awesemo.com projected ownership for 49ers is 12. That's the number one team by 3%. That's a pretty sizable difference. The problem is they're too cheap. Sometimes being too cheap is a problem in a GPP because everybody's like, oh, let's fit a 2,200 defense in so we get better players. And yet everybody ends with the 49ers. It's a very good value defense. And for that reason, I might be out on them.
Interesting. I didn't realize we had them that highly projected for ownership, but that does make sense. So yeah, some reasons there perhaps to avoid the cheap defenses, even when they are ones that could be appealing or could theoretically offer some upside. But let's keep it moving. We got a Kansas City at Jacksonville game, which is one of the highest combined totals on the slate. So here's a question. I'll throw it to you first, Alex. It's a very high totaled game. Obviously, the Jacksonville defense is one that's known. Kansas City, you can make arguments they've gotten worse with the loss of some of the guys like D Ford. Also, they have guys like Frank Irvin, who people will say is now making an improvement. Frank Clark is making an improvement in there. So who would you say, or which side would you shake out on here with Kansas City? Do you feel like they're under-owned, or do you feel like they're adequately owned for both Kansas City and Jacksonville?
I think they're probably the top team of the week to play. They're an amazing fantasy team. Jacksonville was a tough matchup last year. They allowed 0.4 of a yard less per play passing. But I mean, Kansas City is so productive in passing. That still means if you kind of add those together, you're getting significantly above average potential. And I think that there are really clear targets to go to in Tyreek Hill and Kelsey. As far as the passing game. So I think the stack works pretty well. But I'm also interested in the Jacksonville run game because Fournette is coming off a lot of injuries. Kansas City is pretty bad at run defense. And I think that with only Raquel Armstead and Tyler Irvin as his backups, he's going to get a lion's share of the work.
That does check out here. And I guess one follow-up question on that. Leonard Fournette, 16% projected ownership on DraftKings, one of the better projected players in terms of value on the slate. Lofty and I were both shocked that he was that lowly projected for ownership. And we're wondering, do you think that number goes up, or do you think he sticks around that high teens area?
It's tough to say. I mean, he's definitely not a guy with a lot of hype at this point. He was highly touted coming into the league, but it's kind of fizzled out. And I think that I'm almost surprised that it is so low. I mean, that's still one of the higher numbers on the slate, but if it was just me picking lineups, I'd have a lot more than that.
All right, Travis, how about you? Let's talk about the Jags side first, because we do have some ownership projected for Leonard Fournette and for D.D. Westbrook. Are those guys that you'd be comfortable with in Jacksonville offense here who's going to need to put up points theoretically?
Yeah, they look like amazing values, actually. Jacksonville's like one of the biggest. Their offense players are kind of a sneaky big winner during the offseason. Fournette especially. I remember when I did my first show a week and a half ago, I was going in pretty cold, and I was just looking at the teams, how they changed, and who might benefit the most. Fournette kept coming up. You got Yeldon and Hyde are gone. That's a big difference. Armstead is his primary back, just a fifth rounder. That's not a huge amount of hype around him. And then they lost Moncrief, who got a lot of targets last year too, and replaced him with Conley, who I don't think is quite the same player. So there might be targets there as well. And Fournette was being projected. I looked at a few sites, and he's being projected very low to the point where before the ownership stuff came out, I was like, he's not going to be in double digits. And I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to mash this guy in. Nobody's going to play him. I look back a week later, a couple days ago, all of a sudden he's risen like 20, 30% projection-wise. What is going on here? And all of a sudden people are starting to say his name over and over and over, and it's not exciting anymore. I think he's an amazing play. 6K, I think he's a great pivot off of Cook on the same salary. I think they're both going to be chalky, though. But if I had to choose, I'd probably choose Fournette. There's a lot to like there. And Westbrook kind of same not quite the same concept because he's not, he didn't lose the running backs behind him, but he did lose Moncrief. And I think losing Moncrief and gaining Conley is a win for him. And then let's not talk about the fact they got Foles instead of Bortles. That's also a plus for the offense. The team offense efficiency is just going to go up. I think their point totals is higher than it would have been one of the highest last year, not the highest. They had horrible point totals last year. So I think that combination is amazing. I love Jacksonville. And I'm starting to wonder if everybody's just blind to last year and how bad they were. Like, where are the Jacksonville truthers at right now? They're going to be a great team.
So Travis, let me. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Alex.
Go for it. No. Go for it.
Oh yeah. So Travis, let me throw one out to you then, because this is another Alex corollary, which for some reason this really stuck out for me last year, where Alex said at one point of our On the Contrary shows, if you see ownership for a running back and a wide receiver and the quarterback isn't owned, that's probably a quarterback worth having. Nick Foles, 2% projected ownership, and you know what? There are a lot of people out there who don't seem to realize Nick Foles only played, I think, 5 games last year, but he was legitimately good. He was the best quarterback under pressure last year, a 91 QB rating in those spots. He also was pretty accurate overall throwing the deep ball. And again, we've had a below replacement level quarterback in Jacksonville for years. So Travis, would you put any Nick Foles, because you do like Fournette, you like Westbrook, would you put Nick Foles in those lineups with those guys?
Well, first off, I think you guys mailed your Pro Football Focus thing to me the wrong address. I didn't get all these cool stats. I feel a little left out over here. My stats are not quite sophisticated. But Foles looks good. I think it comes down to how you feel Fournette will be used in the passing game. Previous years, Fournette would not be a good running back to stack, right? The correlation's just not really there. This year, I think there's at least reason to believe there's an upside there, and therefore, I think Foles and Fournette are correlated enough where you can go that combo. I think it's fine, and therefore, a Foles, Fournette, Westbrook combo looks pretty good. And then you include, if you want a game stack, you include one of the Kansas City guys. Kelsey fits really well in terms of price and his position. You have a lot of flexibility to build the rest of your team around. You can go a lot of different ways. I'm surprised that's not like stack number 1. It just seems perfect.
Alex, how do you feel about the Nick Foles stack here? I'm excited. We're getting into crappy quarterback time. I didn't even know he's not crappy. I was shocked at how not crappy he was. But Alex, give me your thoughts on Nick Foles.
I think I have to be the voice of reason here. I mean, Nick Foles.
He's a Super Bowl winner.
I know, but last year, I mean, he was abysmal in the playoffs. 6.6 yards per attempt over 2 games. They did beat my Bears, and I was upset about that, so I'm still a little salty. But last year for Philly, he started 5 regular season games, 7.2 yards per attempt. I mean, this is not a guy who moves the needle a ton as far as passing efficiency. And Jacksonville isn't really a team that is set up to be a really strong passing offense. They're more set up for the run. I'm not as high on Westbrook as some other people. I think that his receiving efficiency wasn't that good the last year. He only got 11 yards per catch and caught 60%. That's not really going to be tremendously impressive. I think Marquise Lee coming back and being a starter is going to hurt his potential. I feel like people are missing that because Marquise Lee really does get a large target share when he's on the field. If you go back to 2 years ago, he missed last season because of injury. But if he's healthy now, I think that will be an interesting sleeper. But I prefer some other stacks over Jacksonville.
All right, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, look, the Nick Foles at 1.5% ownership we have him projected for. I think that's a low number, which I'm willing to take some dice rolls on, and I'll believe in Nick Foles, even if Alex, you want to be biased. A small sample size, Alex. You're citing a small sample size. Of all people, I've expected better.
Alex will hate on my 3-game sample, then throw a 2-game out there.
I threw out a total of 7.
That's
it was
fair.
the playoffs too, so those count more.
Yeah. Right. When you're the number 1 player, you can say whatever you want, get away with it.
Let's keep it going here because we're flying by here. We got the Rams heading into a game with Carolina, and I want to talk about the Christian McCaffrey and Curtis Samuel chalk, a guy I would not have thought would be one of the highest owned players on the slate, but currently it looks that way for a value play in Curtis Samuel. McCaffrey, obviously an elite player last year, a guy whose price is still pretty good there. But Travis, I'll throw it to you first. Who would you find more appealing? You're not a big chalk guy. Who's more appealing out of the McCaffrey or the Curtis Samuel chalk?
It's tough because they're very, very different kinds of chalk. McCaffrey is the safe, solid guy. He's got a great floor. He's got a good ceiling too. They get a 53-point game last year. And I think you could argue his situation's a little better. I mean, those Funchess targets need to go somewhere. They could potentially go to Caffrey. And then you got Samuel on the other side. Samuel is mega chalky for a cheap guy. He's very volatile, but he's priced like he was last year at the end of the season. So you got to. He's only 4.2, and it's like his prices not moved. Where Godwin moved up a couple grand, he hasn't moved at all, and they both moved up, to the wide receiver 2 slot. So I don't know, but then you got Curtis Samuel last year. He had opportunities to do better in big snap counts. I remember one of the games that Funchess was out. I think he played 90% snaps. I have written down. He had 2 targets. That's unacceptable. And as a chalky guy, that kind of floor is deathly. So I'm not sure how excited I am about Samuel. That price, and again, it is a better situation. It's enticing. Actually, one of my tight end sleeper, I kind of think Olsen might be worth a small play at 3,200. Actually, that might be the guy that I'm most excited about versus ownership on the team. He was a mid to high 4s guy last season. He's at 3,200 this season on DraftKings. That's a pretty incredible amount, and he's not getting any hype at all. And it's very possible he's washed up. He can't move at all. But I think it's worth a risk in week 1, seeing what he can do, and maybe he got the injuries behind him. I think he is the guy that's not being talked about at all that people should be talking about.
Alex, let's talk about Greg Olsen first, and then give me your thoughts on the McCaffrey and Samuel chalk.
Yeah, I think Greg Olsen, it kind of is an interesting idea because he was such a great fantasy asset in the past. But last year he was on the field 246 snaps, only got 39 targets. That's not going to really. That's like 16% of the time he's on the field. And if you figure he's going to be on the field about 2/3 of the game, which is where I have him at, I think that it leads to a pretty underwhelming projection. Of course, I could be wrong with some of my assumptions there. But I also agree with Travis on. I agree with Travis on Curtis Samuel. I think that he's a little bit overrated this week just because of that 4,200 price tag. I think there's a lot of cheap players. You can make up the difference there. DJ Moore is someone I'm pretty interested in. He's a little bit more expensive, but he's done a lot more with the targets he's gotten. He is targeted less frequently when he's on the field than Samuel has been. So I think Samuel might get more targets, but he's much less efficient with the targets he does get.
That seems fair to me. And yeah, one note about McCaffrey. The Rams defense last year gave up 5.1 yards per rush. Also a very poorly graded run defense for the Rams with a 58 run grade from Pro Football Focus. So I'm very into McCaffrey. And I think also we should talk Cam Newton real fast too, because I think, Alex, you might be more of a believer than I am. I think he's really hurt in a way where he was greatly affected last year. He had only 7 air yards per attempt last year. He also had really bad accuracy on throws over 20 plus yards, and he barely threw him because something was wrong with him. He got that shoulder fixed reportedly, but now he's got ankle and foot issues as well. And a shoulder, I don't know if you know this, very important to a quarterback, I hear. So how are you feeling about Cam Newton?
I feel good. I mean, it's a guy that kind of makes up some difference with his running. I heard he might run less this year, but I'm going to wait and see on that. The main thing, it's going to be hard to build a stack that has a lot of correlation here because the production is spread out among a lot of different players pretty equally. McCaffrey is a great person to pair with Cam, but a lot of that money you're spending isn't going towards the correlation, it's going towards McCaffrey's individual and Cam Newton's individual run stats. So that doesn't really help you as much as pass first quarterback. But I think there's some potential here.
Travis, you got any thoughts on Cam Newton?
First of all, I saw a video recently where he set like 3 or 4 Guinness World Records on the football field. I can't tell you exactly what they were, but I was excited about it. He looked great. And I think this actually is some good stacks here. I think it is a little spread around, but I disagree a little with Alex there. I get that McCaffrey's a running back and running, right? You run the ball a lot, and that's a big amount of your value, especially if you're a 9K running back, 8'8". But I think he gets enough passes, and there's plenty of passing efficiency between the two of them where they could definitely correlate well. And again, you can add a Samuel or more, and I think that 3-man is very potent. I think Cam is pretty good. I think it's pretty good.
All right, yeah, look. If you saw Guinness World Records being set, then I might be the one who's wrong. But I think there's some concern. But I also think even if he is a little banged up or hurt or he can't throw as deep anymore, that's all going to benefit McCaffrey. So I feel like McCaffrey's a guy, and also frankly benefit Samuel, who's not a deep target guy anyway. I think this all could work out well. How about the Rams side? So Jared Goff's guy who jumps out to me. The Rams did not pressure the quarterback that well. Just a 6.2% sack rate, which is on the lower end. Also, according to PFF, there was one big jump out for Jared Goff. He was really good in clean pockets last year, as you might expect, a guy who's been really coached up, maybe not the best improv thinker in the world. A 117.1 QB rating in a clean pocket, a 59.8 QB rating in a dirty pocket. So that's not good. When he's getting pressured, things fall apart. But he's not going to get, or he at least theoretically may not get pressured quite as much against Carolina. So Alex, what is your interest here in Jared Goff and this Rams stack, who's really underowned across the board?
Yeah, I'm interested. I think that this is the opposite of Carolina, where 3 players get a majority of the work: Brandon Cooks, Woods, and Kupp. If you stack up 2 of them, you'll have a pretty good shot of getting the right 2. And I think most of it's a lot different in that the salary you're spending on these 3 guys is all going towards their shared performances. So I think you get a little bit more bang for your buck as far as correlation.
And would you be comfortable with Cooper Kupp coming off this knee injury where apparently he's coming out faster? And he was a very popular target for Goff last year. I guess Kupp and Gurley, are you comfortable with these guys given that we kind of know some health issues with them that maybe would scare some people off?
Yeah, I'm more comfortable with Kupp than Gurley. I think that Gurley, I'm still tilted from that time he fell down at the 1-yard line. If he's going to do that, that's going to really hurt his touchdowns. But I think there is reason to be concerned that maybe he won't be getting 20-plus runs a game. I have him for 15. Of course, he's still productive out of the backfield, catching passes too. But his price is pretty high across the industry. And if you're taking into account the chance that his role will be scaled back a little bit, it may not be as good a value as other players.
All right, Travis, how about you? What are your thoughts here on the Rams? Because these guys are not highly owned at all. Everybody under 10% projected ownership, it looks like, everywhere. And again, a very low-owned quarterback and a questionable asset in Todd Gurley. So where are you going to be with them in week 1, Travis?
You know, Alex and I haven't agreed very much, and this is no different. I completely disagree with what he says. I think these Rams guys they're priced okay. I think in week 7, 8, 9, I would definitely have shares of them. Week 1, I don't think they have the value that you'd want. I think there's, again, last year they did have several games where 2, even 3 would go off. I'm just not comfortable going them when I think there's a lot better guys out there that you can go. And as for the injuries, like, I never know what to do with these injury guys. I'm not a doctor, right? I don't know how these guys are feeling. So I just assume health and let everybody else worry.
Yeah, that seems fair. And I mean, again, like if these guys are getting hurt and coming back like Cooper Kupp, where he's faster and apparently more agile, which it sounds like somebody's been doing something fishy in Germany, one could say. Either way, it's working out. So yeah,
Chris, it's every single year you hear these guys. These guys are faster, stronger. They're eating better. Everybody eats. How's everybody stronger and faster every year? I have no idea.
Yeah, it's crazy. Who knows in a league with questionable testing practices? Who knows? Let's do one. We are running a little low on time here on the slate, so we're going to skip a couple games, or at least I'm going to throw it out to you, Alex. Is there any game we haven't hit on? I think there may be one in Arizona that you're interested in, but any game that you want to hit on here that we have not touched on thus far?
I like the Arizona-Detroit game. I think that Arizona running at a faster pace will generate more fantasy production for both sides. More interested in the Detroit side. I think Galladay will be a better player this year with the departure of Tate, and Amendola is kind of an interesting dart throw moving into that slot role.
How about you, Travis? Do you have any interest at all in this Detroit side here, given that people do forget that pace does affect both sides, and if Arizona isn't good with their pace, they're just going to turn the ball over to a Detroit team who was one of the better clock control teams last year.
Yeah, I like Kerryon Johnson. I think there's potential. Again, we haven't seen. We don't know how things are going to happen. I think there's potential for him to get a large majority of the snaps and be a little under the radar compared to what people think in that regard.
I was pretty bullish on Johnson, but then they signed J.D. McKissick. He's kind of going to be the Theo Riddick of the offense. And that was kind of like contrary to that opinion I had where Kerryon Johnson is going to be like a 3-down back. I don't know. What do you think about McKissick and his role? I
mean, McKissick certainly doesn't help. But again, he's not the biggest guy, so the goal line work, I think, is the most important factor here. With Blunt last year was like the ultimate vulture. Nobody likes LeGarrette Blunt, and he is gone. Is CJ Anderson going to take those touches? I don't know. I think it's worth taking a shot that he doesn't week 1.
So here's a thought, and I think this kind of ties into an overall theme I've seen on Twitter this week, and I touch on it fast, guys, but I'm going to ask you this question. So one lineup I already built by hand, just kind of get a feel for it while using our projections at Osmo.com. I put together a Kerryon Johnson, a Dalvin Cook, and a Leonard Fournette. These are all value guys, and I've seen a lot of people talking about how the move is to put a running back in the flex. So Alex, I'm sure you've done some research, and if you don't want to give it all away, that's fair, but what do you feel about the running back and the flex move, and people who said there's a lot of correlation between that and the Millionaire Maker winning lineups?
I think that really loses the context of football, where they're more valuable running backs. They're projected higher than wide receivers on average, but wide receivers are a higher variance position, which only helps you in fantasy. So I think all things equal, I'd rather have a wide receiver, but there are just more good options at running back.
Travis, you have any thoughts on that with the 3 running back, including one in the flex?
I completely agree with what he said. I completely agree.
There
It's very true.
It took an hour.
It took us an hour when we got there. It's very true. There's just running backs are better on average. The average running back's better than the average wide receiver, and they're going to be owned higher. It's as simple as that.
All right, that makes sense. And Travis, any games here that we didn't hit on that jump out to you as being interesting?
I'm curious, Cleveland. Mainly Chubb and Beckham. I think the other guys are priced a little high because they're priced kind of similar to last year, and Beckham kind of throws everything for a loop, right? I'm curious on those 2 guys. And beyond that, I'd say like Mark Ingram. It's a random thing, but I'm very curious how much Mark Ingram, his usage is. The Arizona offense, I'm very curious to see. And then the Giants post Odell, I'm also very curious to see how they do.
Alex, how are you feeling about this Cleveland team since Travis brought him up here? Because they are a team that's been really hyped, but they're going against a Tennessee defense who did a good job and also offensively really squeezed the air out of the ball with one of the slower paces in the league and just really a run-first approach. How do you feel about Cleveland?
I'm lukewarm. I think that they're going to be a really good team this year with the OBJ on the team. And I'm looking forward to seeing how Baker does. But people think that guy is all of a sudden a top-tier quarterback, and I'm going to just wait until that happens before I really go for it.
All right, that seems fair. Let's go on to, all right, now it's that time of the show. We are going to give our contrarian picks here. So please, guys, hit that like button. The likes are only going to make these picks better. That's how this works. There's a direct correlation. We talk a lot about correlations here. If you stack up a like with these contrarian picks, they'll do much better. So Alex, give me your contrarian QB pick.
So this is a situation where I kind of agree with the ownership. There was only one guy I was able to identify with low ownership that made me interested. It's Phillip Rivers. I think that the Chargers are priced up a little bit, but the matchup is fine versus Indianapolis. It doesn't really move the needle much. They got some talented players, and it's more of a why not than have really good arguments for why he's a great play.
Travis, how about you? Who's your contrarian QB pick?
It's Matt Ryan. It's a surprise. I just think that he always has that potential, especially in a game when they're an underdog, to get behind early and just throw for a mega amount of yards at the end of the game. And all of a sudden you look up, they lost the game 35-21, but Matt Ryan has over 400 yards and you're not even sure where they came from. He always has that GPP kind of winning ceiling that you're looking for.
Yeah, I agree with that one. And I'm going to throw out a guy we talked about, and haters be damned. Nick Foles will be my contrarian quarterback for the week.
Hell yeah. I'm about that one.
We talked. I just only took the advice that Alex gave me last year. So if it's wrong, it's Alex's fault. That's how it goes.
I'm okay with that.
Travis, let's turn it back to you. Contrarian running back for week 1.
All right, so this one is, I already know Alex doesn't like this one, and I saved this for now. I like Todd Gurley. And let me tell you why. Everybody knows he's not supposed to get the same snap counts, right? And everybody knows that he has some sort of injuries that are lingering, and there's a lot of worry. It's time to strike. He's only 8K, I think, and he's priced to be a guy who's not playing every single down like previous. And by the way, he didn't really play every single down in the past either. He just has incredible efficiency because he's on a very good offense and he gets a lot of catches. And I just think that if there's any sort of chance that he plays mega snaps again and the coaches lied, which guess what? They do lie. I think there's a reason to play him here. He's really cheap. And again, what if they're down at halftime? You think the coach is not going to switch a game plan that's not mega Gurley? I think there's a chance. There's a lot of different game flows that involve the heavy Gurley that nobody's accounting for. I just think there's an upside there that nobody's thinking about.
Yeah, and he's going to be as healthy theoretically as he'll be all year in this week 1. So I agree. I think there's some logic there. Alex, how about you? Contrarian running back pick.
I'll go with Devin Singletary. It's a guy I thought would be a lot more highly owned for the hype. He's like in low single digits, and the main data point I'm going off of here is the release of LaShawn McCoy. I mean, he wasn't good in Buffalo, but he was a pretty good player in his career, and I think that him being signed in Kansas City kind of reinforces that. Frank Gore might take some runs, and TJ Yeldon might take some third down work, but Devin Singletary is supposed to be the guy, and at his price of around 4K, that really is good value.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm going to take Matt Breida, even though I don't know that he's worth a ton of ownership. 4K on DraftKings, a very reasonable price. A guy who we saw carry a big workload before he was hurt too much last year. Tampa Bay's run defense terrible last year, and maybe actually, I think you can argue they also got worse. So I'm comfortable with Matt Breida. Let's keep moving to wide receivers. Travis, back to you. Who is your contrarian wide receiver for week 1?
First of all, I'm going to point out that Matt Breida died for me when I needed 5 more points to win a Million Maker, but I'm not bitter about him at all. I think he died on the field late in the year for me, so I'm not a Matt Breida fan. He's
healthy now. Don't worry about it. You're good.
I've heard that before, and I was excited until he died in the second quarter. But I'm not bitter. We'll move on from him. So my wide receiver, you know what? I think Larry Fitzgerald's not getting as much love as he should here. Again, his price is kind of similar to last season, but this offense is supposedly way stronger. And I get it. They have more targets, and I think that's why he's being overlooked. But he always gets so many targets every year, no matter what. I'm just hoping he can get in the end zone some more this year. If he can get in the end zone some more this year, I think Larry Fitzgerald his ceiling can get bigger. He's not the boom bust guy I'm looking for in GPPs usually, especially from a low end guy. But I think he's undervalued as current projection, ownership wise.
Alex, how about you? Contrarian wide receiver pick.
I'll go with Danny Amendola. I mean, not a guy that produced in Miami and didn't produce in New England that well in fantasy. He's dirt cheap, though, and he's on the Lions. They throw a lot more to the slot receiver when Tate was around. And I think he's going to be on the field more than he used to be because the Lions have really bad wide receiver depth. So I think that he could be just that sneaky dart thrower that wins the tournament.
That makes sense. We talked about the pace too, and I'm going to go with the guy we talked about, Rashard Perriman at 1% ownership. If he gets three catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown, even if he doesn't win a tournament, I'm going to look like a genius. So I think that's what matters here on this show. Speaking of looking like a genius, Travis, you have the Twitch stream. You are a genius there every day, a great kind of contributing member to the DFS community that's growing every day on Twitch. Give everybody the plug. What should people expect on your Twitch channel?
Again, the main thing we do, we go over a lot of things. We go over the slates, we look at prices, the basic stuff. But I think the different thing that I do than most is I love to answer questions from the community and about anything, too. It doesn't have to be necessarily football and sometimes not even DFS. I get some weird questions, but I answer just about everything. And I think that's what you can expect from my stream. A lot of interaction.
So go to @PettyTheft, @PETTEY Theft on Twitter to go check out his Twitter handle. And there's a link to the Twitch in there. And it's PettyTheft89, right, on Twitch?
Yes, correct.
All right, cool. And then Alex, final words here before we close this out for the week.
Yeah, Travis, thanks so much for being on the show. It was really fun. I hate to admit it, but I agreed with you more than I thought. And I'm excited to look at your Twitch and possibly collaborate more in the future. And thanks, Fantasydraft. I think they're the place to play week 1. Just overlay the rate-free structure, that $1 million prize pool with their kickoff, their Hooters kickoff. I mean, that's going to be the #1 place I think people should play just because it costs so much less than other sites.
So go to fantasydraft.com, use that promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, for your first $1,000 in rake-free entries. Thank you to them for sponsoring the show. Thank you for Travis. We all hanging out at your Twitch channel, twitch.com/pettytheft, PETTEY Theft89. So go check him out on there as well. And we'll be back with you guys next week for more On the Contrary. So thanks for watching. Hit that like button, and we'll see you guys again soon. Good luck.